Picture this. It's the mid-20th century. America is building everything. The Hoover Dam, the interstate highway system, skyscrapers that cut into the clouds. And then because we apparently didn't have enough going on, we said, you know what? Let's go to the moon. And then we did it in 8 years. No 4,000-page environmental impact statement, no 3 years of town hall comment periods about whether the rocket would cast an inconvenient shadow. Just ambition, engineering, and the belief that the future should be built, not feared. Now, fast forward to today. We can design AI that passes the bar exam, drives vehicles, and provide a medical diagnosis based on millions of pages in seconds, but we can't build high-speed rail between two of America's largest cities, even after spending decades and billions of dollars. We struggle to build power lines, nuclear plants, wind farms, semiconductor fabs, even basic housing, the physical stuff that we and our future depend on. So what changed? And more importantly, how do we build big things again? Here's the paradox. America didn't get dumber or less creative. We are still an innovation superpower. Our universities and labs lead the world. Transformative startups launch every day. Where we've stumbled is not invention, it's implementation. We generate ideas fast, but we build the physical, real-world version painfully slow, if at all. Writer and journalist Ezra Klein talks about this in his book Abundance. He argues that America has shifted from a mindset of confidence and growth to a mindset of scarcity. Scarcity says, yes, we need housing, but please not by my neighborhood. Yes, we need clean energy, but not in a way that inconveniences me. Yeah, we want progress, but only after a decade of studies to eliminate any and all risk. Scarcity isn't a natural fact, it's a policy choice, a result of systems that are optimized not for building, but for preventing things from being built. And then there's author Dan Wang, the author of Breakneck and a prominent observer of industrial capacity and development models. Wang has spent years studying Chinese industrial development and how nations build state capacity to execute big projects. He says China invested in becoming an engineering state, fast, centralized, and execution-oriented, while America evolved into a lawyerly society, built around rights and process over execution. It's not necessarily an insult. We love lawyers. I mean, being one, I'd like to think so. Well, maybe some of us tolerate lawyers. But Wang's point is that we've built a system where process, hearings, objections, and veto points multiply, while the actual execution muscle atrophies. In other words, we've become a country where the question isn't necessarily, can we build it? But rather, what are all the reasons and risks as to why we shouldn't? So, how did we get here? How did our world transformative building power deteriorate and get so eclipsed by other nations? The history and how we got here. Part of the story begins in the late 1960s and 70s. During that time, America passed major environmental laws, many for good reasons. Pollution was severe. Rivers were literally catching on fire, like the Cuyahoga River in 1969. The answer was the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970 and the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA. Signed into law on January 1st, 1970, NEPA requires federal agencies to assess environmental effects before decisions and major public projects. The intention was reasonable. Don't bulldoze wetlands. Don't poison communities. Look before you leap. But over decades, environmental review expanded far beyond the original idea. What began as a thoughtful safeguard evolved through court rulings, additional regulations, and local layering into a system that can take years just to approve a single project, even if everyone agrees on it. Federal permitting reviews alone can take over half a decade. Environmental impact statements that once fit into a binder can now run 2,000 plus pages. Sometimes the appendices alone are longer than the novel War and Peace. Although, to be fair, War and Peace itself would probably need an environmental impact statement today before publishing. and then a public comment period where Tolstoy is accused of excessive tree consumption for printing. But again, environmental protection is good. We don't want lead in water or smog choking our cities, but we also need a system that protects nature while also allowing essential and critical progress, not strangling it. Let's put this in real-term examples of how building in the US has become so slow and expensive. California's no speed rail. All the way back in 1982, California Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill to study what it would take to build a high-speed rail system across the state. In 1996, the state formed a high-speed rail authority to plan for the construction of what would be America's fastest rail system. And finally, in 2008, voters approved a plan to build the first segments by 2020 for $33 billion. Jerry Brown, the project's main champion, had returned to the governor's mansion by then, and even President Barack Obama supported the cause, signing the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and offering billions in support. The dream was to connect San Francisco and Silicon Valley to LA and Southern California, carrying millions of families, individuals, tech entrepreneurs, and film creatives, all the while cutting traffic and car smog. However, the subsequent years proved otherwise. Progress on the project was crippled. Costs grew enormously. The rail, now 40 years later, is still not built. Now the state is simply trying to save face and salvage anything. A line between Merced and Bakersfield, a fragment of the original dream, but which itself is still expected to cost $35 billion and won't be operational until the early 2030s. It's worth noting, as Klein and his co-author Derek Thompson do, that the US has contributed to railroad technology as much as any other country in the world, if not more so. Americans invented the air brake and, for significant stretches of history, led the world in rail construction. The western portion of the Transcontinental Railroad, which spanned around 1,800 miles, took only 6 years to complete. But what got in the way of California's dreamed-of high-speed rail wasn't a lack of technological know-how. It was the environmental reviews, legal wrangling, negotiation with landowners, and NIMBYism, or not in my backyard folks, who stymied progress at every turn. New York's East Side Access Tunnel. New York's East Side Access Tunnel is another example, connecting the Long Island Railroad to Manhattan, and finished at more than $11 billion and over 2 decades to build. Industry researchers point out it cost more per mile than almost anywhere on Earth. But why? Years of delay, complex contracting, integration challenges, oversight issues, and a system where every added year added financing costs, risks, and more opportunities for redesign and rework. For example, investigations found that work sites were often overstaffed due to union agreements. One report noted 900 workers were paid to do 700 available jobs, with many earning approximately $1,000 a day. So when people say, why can't we just build more transit? This is why. The system we've built around building can turn a useful project into a multi-decade financial bonfire. What about nuclear plants? We just finished Vogtle Units 3 and 4, among the first newly built US large reactors in decades. But they arrived years late and massively over budget. Unit 3 began operations in July 2023, and Unit 4 reached commercial operation in April 2024, with costs rising from an original $14 billion estimate to roughly $30 billion. What this illustrates is not nuclear is impossible, it's that our system makes it extremely hard to build anything complex, tightly regulated, or a mega project without ballooning costs and timelines. And nuclear is especially vulnerable because delays in financing costs can be catastrophic. The housing crisis. Even housing, something we used to build like kids snapping together Legos, now often takes years of zoning hearings, review boards, environmental analysis, and sometimes lawsuits. Cities like San Francisco approve multifamily housing at a median of 2 to 4 years. This matters because when it's hard to build, the result is predictable. Fewer homes, higher rents, and a world where young families and working people get priced out. Every delay adds costs. Every cost adds friction. Friction creates scarcity, and scarcity makes everything more expensive: rent, energy, transportation, growth. One of the clearest modern examples is TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They're the world leader in advanced chips, the heart of smartphones, data centers, AI, and much of modern technology. In sum, TSMC is one of the most powerful companies on the planet. Under the CHIPS Act, the US convinced TSMC to build major fabs in Arizona as part of a push to strengthen domestic semiconductor manufacturing. A huge win on paper. In practice, it's been bumpy, to say the least. TSMC has faced massive permitting hurdles, safety code differences, construction labor shortages, cost inflation far higher than in Taiwan, delays in equipment installation, even challenges importing specialized engineers. Executives publicly said the US just lacked enough technicians trained for advanced fab work, so the company needed visas and work development programs. The fabs will still happen, but slower, later, and more expensive than planned. TSMC's CEO described the Arizona facilities as taking at least twice as long to build as comparable fabs in Taiwan, and noted permitting and compliance barriers as major reasons for that. In many instances, regulations for the industry didn't even exist at the local level, so TSMC also said it had to create about 18,000 rules and spent $35 million working with local authorities just to navigate those requirements. If the world's top chipmaker struggles to build in America, that should raise some questions. It's like we've designed a system where building development meets American Ninja Warrior. Why this matters and how we fix it. So why did America slow down? There are several reasons at play. We added layer upon layer of rules, regulations, and veto points. We turned building into a negotiated and moving maze instead of a clear path. Local politics often rewards saying no more easily than saying yes. We lost the habit and the institutional muscle of building repeatedly. And because we build less often, each project becomes a massive one-off undertaking instead of something standardized. And countries that build things affordably, subway tunnels, rail lines, wind farms, they do it again and again, using similar designs, similar teams, similar processes. Repetition lowers costs. Standardization increases skill. Meanwhile, here in the US, we treat every new project like a bespoke piece of artisanal sourdough, handcrafted by a committee of 37 stakeholders who all knead the dough one time each in alphabetical order. And then your neighbor sues because they're more a fan of gluten-free baguettes. But here's the good news. This is a solvable problem. We can reform permitting to be fast, fair, and predictable. Set deadlines, reduce redundant reviews, add staff to agencies, perhaps even create specialized construction courts that resolve lawsuits quickly instead of stretching them over years and years. We can standardize infrastructure design. We can legalize more housing at the local level. We can train and import more skilled workers, especially for things like chip manufacturing, energy infrastructure, and nuclear construction. And maybe more importantly, we can rebuild the cultural belief that progress is noble. The opposite of not in my backyard isn't forcing people to accept bad projects. The opposite is a culture that says, yeah, we need this. Yes, we'll build it responsibly. And yes, this will make our life better. Ezra Klein says the goal isn't just abundance of stuff, but abundance of possibility. A future where we can dream and then actually build the thing we dream. America used to build big things, and we still can. We're the nation that built skyscrapers, highways, space shuttles, microchips, the internet. We don't need to become China. We need to become America at our best. Not a country asking who will object, but a country asking proudly, what will we build next? And here's where you can step in, because this doesn't get fixed by vibes alone. If we want America to build again, we need a build coalition that's bigger than one party and bigger than one issue. So here are 3 practical things you can do. First, show up locally. Housing and infrastructure often die at the city and county level. Go to a zoning meeting once. I know it sounds like watching paint dry, except paint is also reading a PDF aloud, but a few yes voices can change outcomes. Second, support faster, clearer permitting. Not no rules, but clear rules. Tell your state and federal representatives you want faster timelines, fewer duplicative reviews, and quicker court resolutions so projects don't get stuck in a decade-long limbo. Third, reward builders politically and culturally. When a leader fights for a transmission line, a housing reform, or a clean energy project and does it responsibly, back them up. Write the email, make the call, vote like you want your grandchildren to have a functioning future. If you want to see America build, not just imagine, then like this video, share it, drop a comment below, because a future worth living in isn't something we wait for, it's something we build together. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care of yourself.